I direct feature films sometimes, and I direct television quite a lot at the moment. Wait a second, I'm going to get good. I like all these hands up. And I'm really happy to tell you anything you want to know about what I do, how I got to do it, and all of that good stuff. But yes, you're going to need to ask me questions, because then I know that I'm not going to be boring you. I'm going to be telling you things that you want to know. And so, here I am. Let's do it. Let's start with some questions. Yes, go on. You had your hand up a lot.
So, my name's Julian.
Hey, Julian.
I'm an inspiring producer or director.
Right.
And I'm working on a
YouTube
series called The Alta Heroes.
Right.
You all know about Batman, Pokemon, Star Wars.
Never heard of any of them.
Well, besides that, what is your TV series Outsiders about?
Good. All right, well, if you're really nice to me, and nobody's mean to me, that nobody makes me cry, I'll show you a little bit from that show, a bit I directed where two guys have a fight using huge mechanical excavators. A fun sequence, and so I'll tell you a little bit more about the show. I'll come to your hands in a minute. Put your hands down so you don't get a pain in them, and then I'll tell you as soon as I'm ready for the next question. So, Outsiders, the show I'm doing here in Pittsburgh, which is why I'm here for 6 months, is a show. It's about a family of people who've lived up the top of a high mountain. It's supposed to be in Kentucky, and they've lived there as a family for over 200 years. They have their own language, their own customs. They don't use money. They make their own booze. And they're pretty wild, crazy people, but they have their own laws and their own rules. And they've been living very happily up in this mountain for a couple of 100 years. Nobody bothers them until the coal company comes into town. And they want to blow the whole top off the mountain and dig out $1 billion worth of coal. And that's really where our story begins. It's kind of a battle between our big family of people living up on the mountain and the coal company that wants to take the mountain away from them.
So the coal company.
Yep. So that's the basis of our story. There's a lot more going on, obviously, but that's the basis of it. Yeah. And I'll tell you a bit more about the scene you're going to see when we get there. Yeah.
Before you even got into TV and film production, have you studied some basic history or some science?
So here's the thing about film, making film. Film is like an intensely people business. You make stories about people. To make stories about people, you have to work with a heck of a lot of people. Actors, technicians, camera operators, sound operators, costume designers, set designers. It's a huge number of people. So, a lot of people think being a film director is about, learning how many millimeters that lens has and learning all this technical stuff. That's the easy part. But the more interesting part of what I do, I find, is exactly that. It's working with people, and I never really wanted to be a film director when I grew up, honestly. I didn't know what I wanted to be, but I did a lot of stuff. I wrote music, I played a lot of music, I worked with writers on scripts, I ran a company for a while, a theatre company, and I worked in theatre for a bit. And I only gradually moved towards film directing. So, when I finally thought, I want to be a film director when I grow up, I was in my late 30s. And I was really jealous of all the young kids that have been running around doing filmmaking for years. But what I realized I had that they didn't have was a whole other set of insights and understandings that really helped me do my job well. And so there are many, many different roads to being in the movies, but the most important road that I would recommend is live a life first. Because if you haven't lived a life, what are you making movies about? You're only making movies about other movies, probably, because that's probably all you've been doing, watching stuff. So, yeah. All right. Who's had their hand? Somebody had their hand up quite a long time. You did, I think.
Is your TV show The Outsiders based on the book, The Outsiders, the normal book?
No, it's not based on that. There is a book called The Outsiders. I believe there's an old film.
I read it.
Yeah, you have? Is it cool?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so,
Yeah.
yeah, did you know that there can be another downside to directing, like bad directors like M. Night Shyamalan, who made a movie of something. So,
Night
a movie of the show Last Airbender. He basically ruined everything good about the show, and yeah.
Okay, so Night Shyamalan is my brother-in-law.
M. Night Shyamalan.
Yeah, he's my brother-in-law. I don't mind. I'm kidding. You always need to be careful who you root about in this business, because most people know people. And by the way, I totally agree with you. The Last Airbender, the original series, one of the best things ever made for television. And he crashed. He ruined it. I completely agree. That's kind of an illustration of the fact that lots of money doesn't necessarily make things better.
And like on that topic, Fantasia, which was made 75 years ago.
I know, and it's still amazing.
Looks and sounds amazing, while Food Fight, which was released in 2012, looks ugly.
Yeah, I agree. All right, you already asked one question, so I'll come back to you in a minute. All right, in purple.
Yeah, have you seen Fantasia?
What, the new one?
The old one.
Oh, the old one. I've seen it like 20 times. Kidding?
You know you're on. You know you're on many cameras, right?
Oh, that's fine. I'm used to telling the cameras where to point, but these guys can point where they like.
No, like you're talking about your brother-in-law.
Oh, my supposed brother-in-law. He'll survive. All right. Yes, you've got. You had your hand up for ages.
Was there anything that specifically inspired you to make this TV show, or just to do filmmaking in general?
Well, those are two really different questions. I mean, I've always loved film. We've all sat, whether in front of a screen, a big movie screen, and just gone, whoa, So when sometimes you watch really old films, like your friend was talking about Fantasia or whatever, and they reach out. When I was a kid, my local movie theatre used to show these old movies made in India and Russia and all over the place. And I would sit there and listen to a scratchy soundtrack and look at these people from a long time ago, long dead now probably, and find myself at the end of that movie crying my eyes out or laughing because, they reached out, and you suddenly realize what the power of cinema is and visual storytelling. It goes beyond time, it goes beyond culture, it goes beyond language. And I think that was more than anything else what made me want to make movies myself.
Other than the television series Outsiders, what other productions have you directed?
Well, I've directed a lot of things. I've directed a bunch of feature films, a lot of which you probably may not know, but one was called Entrapment with Sean Connery and Catherine Zeta-Jones. One was called The Core, which is about a bunch of people going to the centre of the earth. One was called Copycat, which I hope none of you have seen, because it's about a serial killer, and it's got Holly Hunter and Sigourney Weaver in it. Yeah, one was called Summersby. That was a love story set back in the Civil War. And then I've done a lot of television as well. Once Upon a Time, the fairy tale series.
Oh, you did that?
Yeah,
That's cool.
I did stuff with the Tudors and the Borgias for television. I've done a bunch of stuff. Anyway, yeah.
I really want to know, what was the real reason The Last Airbender sucked?
All right, well that's a really interesting discussion, but I think, I'm going to just keep it really short for this one because I think there's more useful things you can get out of me personally. But are you up? Sure. Normally everybody tells me my voice is too loud. Especially when
All right, let's go. That's how it's done.
I didn't know
Don't mind me, I'm a professional.
All right. Good. Very good. So, you know, but here's the thing. You know, what was extraordinary about the animated series on television was the way that they made real people out of all of these people. Every one of those characters were funny, they were smart, they were vulnerable, they were real, and you came to care about all of them. You know what I'm saying? In the movie, you didn't care about anything except for visual effects. You spent so much time creating sort of visual magic that you forgot to include real human beings in the story, and that's the problem. Really, that's why it failed.
Yeah, Doug Walker. Doug Walker did a video about Just That.
Yeah.
Movie. And that's 40 minutes long.
I know.
A lot of you should see Doug Walker's video on it.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Yes.
Was me.
Oh, do you get upset
I'll
to
ask you
entertain
next.
us? Do you get upset just to entertain us, please?
Say, could I do what?
Get upset just to entertain us?
Just to entertain you.
Why do that? Like,
All right. Yo.
The Outsider, well, number one, I have 2 questions. The Outsider seems like a good show concept. I'm not into, like thriller stuff like that, but it does sound like a good show, and I was wondering, where did you come up with the idea for this show, The Outsider? And since we're on the top, and the second one, since we're on the topic of reboots, what did you think of the Ghostbusters reboot by Paul Feig? Because that movie I thought was terrible.
All right. Well, so the second question first. I haven't seen the reboot. There's been an awful lot of really ugly stuff said about it, both about the black actress involved. There's been a lot of trolls on the internet saying really unpleasant things. A lot of people think, oh, how dare they, as though Ghostbusters is some unbelievable classic that should never be touched. That's completely nonsense.
Exactly.
You know, there's no unbelievable classic that should never be touched.
Except for the Star Wars original trilogy.
Except what?
Except for the original trilogy.
Well, you know, even that, I would venture to say that J.J. Abrams' reboot is a really interesting one. The last 3 George Lucas films are horrible. And what happens to George Lucas? Well, the answer is probably way too much money.
I actually knew what happened.
Oh, you do?
I met his son a few years ago. I'm still CityCon. Jed or Zed. I think his name was.
Jet Lucas.
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah.
He played as this little kid on Star Wars in episode 3.
Right.
He told me a little bit about what happened, that he's giving away Lucasfilm over to Disney because he's retired and he just wants to.
Yeah. Sometimes when you make films, you need to stay hungry. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
You need to stay hungry and you need to stay scared, because when you're scared, it makes you kind of honest as a filmmaker. And sometimes great filmmakers get too successful. Nobody challenges them. Nobody says, well, hold on a sec, I think you're wrong about that. And you end up doing work that's not quite so good. I want to hear from somebody that hasn't yet asked questions. Oh, and I'll get to you as well.
Oh, you forgot my other question about how did you come up with the idea of
Oh, I didn't. Okay, so most of the time in television, the show will be originated by somebody. Somebody will write the original script, have the idea. He's generally known as the creator. Okay, so when you see created by on the credits, that's usually what it means. Then very often there's a team of writers that write the episodes, and they're usually overseen by a showrunner. A showrunner is the guy that makes sure everybody's scripts basically is ultimately speaking with the same voice. Sometimes it's the same as the creator, sometimes it's another person. And then there are producers who do all the kind of financial work, they put all the packages together, they deal with selling the stuff, they deal with getting the crews and teams together. And then they're the directors, and I'm one of them, and they're the guys that shoot the episodes, tell the actors what to do, tell the camera guys where to put the cameras, talk about the style and the mood and the feelings and how everything's played. So I'm one of those. I'm a director and I direct scripts. So, what? Your question.
One of my
Who said hey? Oh yeah, I'll come back to you.
About the outsiders. This is kind of like the whole concept of this, you know, about urbanization versus the people who, you know, versus the people who have lived there for quite some time.
Yeah.
You know, this sort of sounds like what happened in the last act of Return of the Jedi. You know, that's how the Ewoks were able to actually topple the Empire. You know, because they knew that their terrain like the back of their hands.
Exactly.
And used it against the Ewoks.
There's stories that go all the way back to Robin Hood. You know, have been about this idea that people living on the land, living without lots of money or lots of machines or lots of weapons, can sometimes, not always, but sometimes defeat much bigger forces. It's a great sort of theme that goes through so many different films, different stories and different ideas. And yeah, it's one of them. All right, you sir. I cheated you, didn't I? You can get to ask your questions. Go on.
So, is there any difference between movie and film?
No, none at all. You know, we still call, in England, which is, as you might have guessed, where I come from, we tend to call them films. In America, they tend to call them movies. You know, films were always shot on film, and they're not shot on film very much anymore. They're shot digitally. So film is becoming increasingly an endangered species. A lot of filmmakers still love film because it has a lovely kind of feel to it. The image has a special kind of feel. But the great thing about digital photography is that you can take the image and do all kinds of stuff with it. Change the colors, change all kinds of things. So it gives you a great deal of flexibility. It's cheaper, basically, than film. And the big trouble with film was that things used to go wrong with it all the time. Put it in the wrong chemicals at the wrong moment, and you know, a whole day of filming could have been ruined. So it made film very fragile. All right, I'm going to ask somebody at the back, because you've already asked the question, I'm going to ask them. Go on.
What would maybe your greatest experience in your whole career, in your work?
In my work?
Yeah.
You know, a long time